Good evening. Evening, Katie.
Evening, Matt.
How you doing?
Well, yes, I'm doing really well. I had to think about it just for a little second because we've had some sort of weird forest fires around here today.
Oh my God, that's not the sort of the faint orange glow on your skin. That's not fire raging out of the window, is it?
No, no, that's my
Sorry,
subtle
I don't know why I'm
lighting.
laughing.
I don't know why you're laughing.
Terrible.
That's my subtle lighting in the tasting room, actually, the
Beautiful.
ambient lighting.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, today, for some
Yeah.
reason, that there's been a couple of 10 fires that have started just spontaneously around, not in Tucson, but not too far away, about 10 kilometers away. So
God, that's awful. Is that somebody flicking a giton into the undergrowth or something like that, do you think?
yeah, no, apparently, mind you, people always say that. They say it's criminal, started by somebody on purpose.
Awesome.
So Irene, so can I say hello if I say so? Hi, Irene.
Yes, please do.
Oh, Brian Moore as well. Let's see. Great to see you. Mum and Dad, are you there in Ludlow?
Oh wow, you're expecting your mum and dad tonight. That's exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
Katie's mum and dad. Yeah, fantastic.
They've got the pack anyway.
Oh, good. Oh, that's the main thing. Well, hopefully they'll get to join us. And good evening, everyone. We're just letting everyone filter in to the virtual Zoom room to join tonight's tasting. So we'll give everyone a minute or two longer. We're expecting a big crowd tonight for a very exciting tasting.
Can I just say hello to Vivian? Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, Vivian Hall. I just saw you. Great that you could join us. Hope you've got the sweets with you, Vivian, because when she comes on my rambles, she always brings a bag of sweets.
Ooh, what sort of sweets? Any random ones?
Mix from Woolworths, and then she told me that Woolworths doesn't exist anymore. Is that right?
It hasn't existed for since you left the UK, probably.
About 30 years ago, then. Woo.
Yeah. Exists in Australia. It's big business in Australia, but yeah, hasn't existed for a while. But yeah, I think that's everyone's childhood memory, isn't it? Dare I say, this is probably a bit wrong, like stealing Pick a Mix from Woolworths as a very young boy.
You stole Pick a Mix.
I didn't really. Maybe the odd one found its way into the bag after it had been weighed. I don't know.
I can't believe you just said that, Matt.
I know.
I'm sure your wife is. Oh, hi, Nikki.
Oh my.
Your wife's
Nikki's
listening.
Here. Nikki's in the house. Mrs. Smith, the better half. Glad you could make it also.
I bet she didn't steal sweets from Woolworths.
Definitely not. Right. Well, officially, welcome everyone to a very exciting Thirsty Tuesdays, although it's Wednesday. Happy Hump Day, everybody. Perfect evening for a drink. So welcome everyone. Exciting taster pack tasting session with my old friend Katie Jones, naked winemaker legend and recent Instagram sensation. So welcome.
Thank you, Matt.
Welcome this evening. It's so great to have you with us. I know everyone's really excited to taste through some of the wines with us. Yeah, should be great. So you were talking about some. If anyone had missed the beginning, you were talking about some wildfires that had started down in your village. I guess that's not an uncommon occurrence in your neck of the woods, is it?
It's not, because I'm right down in the south of France. I know you know where I am, Matt, but I'm right down between Narbonne and Perpignan, for those of you who don't know exactly where I'm talking to you from now, in a little village called Tucson. And yes, it does get extremely, extremely hot, but this year in particular, we've had heat waves up to 42 degrees, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. And that, although that temperature is not that unusual, it's unusual so early on in the season. And fires are just scary, obviously, but they are a massive hazard or a massive risk down here. And today, apparently, what they say is it's been windy, forgot to mention the important thing. So
the wind.
The wind, yes. And windy down here is about 100 kilometers an hour. That's sort of between 80 and 100. The Tramontane, it's sort of normal. And that got up today. And I overheard somebody saying that there's basically a pyromaniac going around lighting fires. And there's been 10 fires that have started, not in Tucson, but in just over the border in the Roussillon. But it's like 1,000 hectares have been burnt in one area. Yeah, they're not small.
Wow.
Yeah, they're major. It's been on the news.
That's huge, and damage to vineyards. Do you know whether that's happened, or is it forest mainly?
Forest is not, it's more scrubland, sort of garrigue, that wonderful word, Mediterranean garrigue, and scrubland. And the vines actually act as a good barrier normally for forest fire or for scrubland fires. And they can actually stop fires spreading. But I think in this instance, there weren't that many vines. It's not an area that's planted with vines. It's just literally lovely, natural garrigue countryside. So
that's a shame.
A bit more tomorrow, but it was very smoky in Tucson because then the winds changed and it was a sea breeze that came in and blew all the smoke and the ash towards Tucson. So yeah, it's a long way away, Mum and Dad. If you are watching, don't worry. We are fine in Tucson. But...
Katie's safe. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Good. Well, hope everyone's excited tonight. I hope you've got your taster packs have arrived in the post. If you've gone all in, I know some of you have, and ordered the case, and you've invited friends around for a tasting, even better. We've got 6 delicious wines to taste through tonight. Some new, some not so new, but all made by Katie Jones. Just as a quick reminder, we started these taster packs about a year ago, and I suppose we'll open up the first one. But if you're just not sure how to use them, it's 100 mils. It's perfect serving for 2 of you. But if you're just tasting on your own and you want to save a bit till later, you can cut a small bit off the corner and put a peg in it or something like that. But that is the taster packs. As ever, it's a really sociable, informal evening. I see loads of you talking in the chat. That's really great. Keep the chat going between you, sharing stories, sharing food recommendations is a great way of use of that. And then if you've got any specific questions for Katie as we go along, pop them in Q&A, and hopefully we'll get some questions at the end. So let's get into the first wine, and I guess I trust you've got some wine there, Katie, ready to go, haven't you?
A slight bit of wine here. So
perfect. So
French, but...
that's the one. So this is a new one that Katie's just released this year, Le Petit Train Picpoul Terret, and we're going to pour that into our glass. And I guess, Katie, just for anyone new to Naked who perhaps doesn't know your story, how does somebody from Leicestershire end up in a small village in the Languedoc? When and how?
Well, when, it's quite a long time ago now. So I'm getting up to 30 years, can you believe it, down here in this little tiny village in the Languedoc. How it happened, I always believe in fate. And basically, I went on holiday and was working in the wine trade and ended up in this wonderful little village called Tucson. And I did a bit of work experience in the local big wine cooperative here. And then the director offered me a job. And I just really never returned home from that holiday. And I just absolutely fell in love with the place. Just thought I'd always wanted to be French, and I'd always wanted to live in France. And when I arrived in Tucson, it's really like we're in the middle of nowhere. So it's really cut off. But for me, it's like the real France. This is like La France profonde, as they call it down here. And I just thought this is where I'm meant to be, and that was it. And having said that, I was only going to stay for a couple of years, and then I'm still here 30 years later.
Yeah.
And so I worked at the cooperative for 15 years. When I say cooperative, it's a wine cooperative. It's not the local supermarket that I worked at.
It's not the co-op.
It's not the co-op, it's the wine cooperative in the village. I worked there for 15 years. And after that, decided to set up my own little wine domain called Domaine Jones. And that was set up in 2009.
And just for people who don't know, I mean, a wine cooperative, they're pretty common in France and most of Europe. But just explain quickly what that was.
So a wine cooperative, if it is well managed, are fantastic institutions, and they basically allow members of the cooperative, and members just concentrate on farming the grapes, so on growing the grapes, and then they take their grapes into the cooperative, and the cooperative has a winemaker, has a salesperson, and that was me at the time, who helps to sell the grapes, not the grapes, the wines, and they basically look after everything else for the farmer. So the farmer just literally grows the grapes, and then it's the cooperative, once they've sold the wine, will pay the farmers back.
So it's quite a sort of caring system, really, for the.
It's a wonderful, It, especially here, like in Tucson, there's 800 people, and most people are members of the cooperative. So it has a very social role in the village. There isn't really any other major employment here, apart from Domaine Jones now, with like 3 people.
Domaine Jones building the empire. So you left the co-op and you started Domaine Jones when in 2009 or 10 or something like that. Yeah. And then how much wine were you making those early days? And then
so the first vintage, I think I made around 8,000 bottles. So it was just one tiny little vineyard. It was all a bit of a with my husband Jean-Marc, it was just like, let me buy a vineyard and then let's try and make some wine and let's see what happens. So it was really sort of experimental days, and it happened and it worked, and I sold out of that first vintage. I think I got a couple of gold medals along the way, which helped, and just sold out really quickly. So with that, we just went and bought another little tiny vineyard and gradually grew as you say, the Domaine Jones empire, which is now up to 15 little tiny vineyards. But it hasn't always been that easy. We've had our ups and downs along the way, which is, as my mum says, there's always a silver lining. And in 2013, I think we upset, I don't know, just generally the village, and unfortunately our vats were emptied, so we lost all of our white wine harvest back then, which we were obviously totally devastated by it. But that's when Naked stepped in. So I know lots of people know my story, but I know there are people that don't know it, and they don't know how important it was to us when Naked stepped in, and they basically came in and said, look, don't worry, we'll buy up your next vintage of Fitu. So basically I started with the Fitu wine. Naked advanced the money, bought the next vintage, and also they sent out a rescue case. So I don't know if any of you there remember that rescue case that was there, but that really got us back to where we should be going, got us back on track. And now today we just look back on it, and I'd never say it was good what happened to us, because we've been through some pretty difficult times, but there is always that silver lining, sunshine after rain.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to that. I mean, it's an incredible story, and it's great to recount it for anyone who's new to Naked. And it's real sort of, I guess, one of our best examples of how we work well together, and how, I guess, out of adversity, something great's come. Everything's we've both grown, I guess, Naked and Domaine Jones, significantly since those days. And it's really been because of that one terrible event that kind of got turned on its head. And that's very much your outlook on life, isn't it? And I know we've first of all, I'll say for any of our customers, who were on tonight, who were on tour last week. We were back on the road. It was fantastic to get naked back on the road, tasting wines with customers. And we had the wine is live now on the site, but we had a sneak preview of your new wine, Sunshine After Rain, which is named specifically after that, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, I was showing that. It's a lovely summery red. So if you haven't seen it yet, it is, and you didn't get a chance to taste it. It went down extremely, extremely well on tour. So, and people still ask me, naked, how does it work for you? And honestly, it's just been totally amazing from where we've come from. Like we said, 8,000 bottles, and today, we sell out every vintage. I'm even looking for other wines in the area that I think are really special that I can send on to the angels so that you can taste them too. So no, it's been a totally amazing journey. So somebody just said, sorry,
carry on.
No, somebody just said, how are relations in the village now? So just to say, it's pretty indifferent and it's good. It's much better, definitely much better. I mean, this was quite a few years ago now. So things from that point of view are much better. We haven't had any signposts blanked out or vineyards ripped up or anything like that at all for a couple of years now. So it's going well.
Yeah, that must have been even after the event, quite a challenging few years, where a very awkward feeling, I guess, in the village. Not knowing really.
It was, but I don't know if any of you have read Jean de Florette and Manon des Sources. It's a book that really inspired me, perhaps a bit too much when I was really young. And there's trouble in there as well. And I think it's just, it's never perfect wherever you are, whatever you're doing in life. There's always negatives. But for me, the positives definitely outweigh those negatives. So no, it's
fantastic. Well, you mentioned even having to keep up with demand and looking further afield. Let's get on to the first wine, because that is a perfect example of where you've gone outside of your own space in the Languedoc to look for something, I guess, that complements what you do really well in the domain. So the first wine, ladies and gents, is a new wine, Le Petit Train Picpoul Terray 2021. So Katie, tell us a bit about this wine. So Picpoul Terray. Terray is not that well known.
I've got a story about Picpoul in a minute.
Fantastic.
I just absolutely love white wine. And in my particular local area, it's really difficult to find vineyards with white grapes in. It's majority red. And so I have to, for my personal consumption as well, have to go perhaps a little bit further when I'm looking for a wine that's just really easy to drink, really straightforward, uncomplicated, but something a little bit different. And I came across this one from a friend in a little village called Florensac. And I was tasting through his range of wines, and I just took one sniff of the nose and thought, this is absolutely delicious. And it's nothing too complicated at all. It's just a really simple, straightforward white wine. Now they're not too far from the Mediterranean. So it's for me, it's just a lovely seaside, sunny holiday white wine made from two grapes. So made from the Picpoul and the Terray. And you'll notice the spelling on the Picpoul when we taste the next wine. The spelling is slightly different. And there's a story.
It's the same grape, right?
Yeah. Do you want I've been trying to explain the story all day just because it's the same grape. So Picpoul and Picpoul, as in the second wine, it's the same grape. Picpoul, same grape. What happened though is there is an appellation called Picpoul with the C. Yeah. And I will repeat the story when we get on to the next one, but there's an appellation called Picpoul. So it's almost as if somebody named an appellation after Chardonnay or after a grape variety. So the appellation, rather than being named after a place, has been named after a grape variety. So the appellation Picpoul exists, and to protect that appellation, if you use Picpoul in any other wine that is not an appellation wine, not a Picpoul appellation, you have to spell it differently, and you have to spell it Picpoul. So with a QU, as it is on this little box.
So they did a pretty canny thing, really, and commandeered the grape variety for themselves in Picpoul, as in Picpoul de Pinet. But there you go. So, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same grape. So, Angels, you'll hopefully have seen a lot of Picpoul around. It's become extremely popular white variety. It's generally just quite fresh and delicate, a little bit floral. This is that grape, but it's blended with Terre. What do you think Terre does to this blend?
I think it just adds perhaps a little bit more texture to it, and perhaps a little bit more balance than when you've just got a single Picpoul at this entry level. And you'll see on the next one other things you can do with the Picpoul grape when it's by itself. But I think this just adds a little other dimension. I sort of get sherbet lemons, and there's a sort of sherbety marshmallowy, so I don't know, that's not the right way to describe it, but a sherbet lemons, melons, and just lovely sort of gentle fruit in there as well, with the lemon acidity on the end of it. And I think Terre just adds a bit more complexity to the single Picpoul grape variety.
Yeah, I think that's right. Adds a bit more sort of backbone and structure for me. It's definitely a seaside wine, isn't it? It's got real like salty, fresh tang to it. I guess, what would you drink it with? I mean, it's great on its own. It's simple, it's fresh, it's delicious. Go well with some simple grilled fish.
I think so. Or you could just go like fish and chips. I mean, it's got that sort of line of acidity in it that will cut through sort of fish and chips, scampi and chips. I almost imagine myself sitting on the beach in Brighton, like we were the other week at the tasting, with a glass of this and my sort of scampi and chips in the other hand, and just
out of some paper. Yeah,
on a deck chair, that sort of idea. You know, just it's really relaxed, and it's a sort of wine. If you've had a really heavy day at work, you just want to come home, you don't want anything too heavy to think about, but you want a bit of sunshine, something a bit to wake you up. I think, you know, this really hits the mark. Picpoul and Terre.
That's fantastic. Well, this is a sort of it's already scoring really well. So Angel's really loving it. Even though it's very recent, but it sort of came out. We brought it out, I guess, because it was known impossible to make Vermentino this year, and we decided to launch this one. So last year was quite challenging vintage conditions, and you couldn't make Vermentino. Guys, you might remember the Petit Tram Vermentino from last year. So this kind of replaces that, and I think it's doing really well so far, and it's a sort of happy. It's a silver lining to that problem as well. So
and it got a bronze medal, I believe, so which is always recently. So,
great. Okay, guys. So that's wine number one. Hope you've all enjoying that. I'm seeing loads of good comments in the chat. People liking that. So let's get on to the next wine. This is Picpoul also, and we showed this on tour for anyone who was there. And this is. I won't steal Katie's thunder because I know she's got loads to say about this wine. But this is a very special expression of Picpoul. So there we go. You can see Katie modelling the bottle. All good things. Why is it called that?
All good things come to those who wait. And this is exactly what you have to do with this Picpoul. So it's a Picpoul de Pinet. It's appellation made 100% from the Picpoul de Pinet. And you can already see by the colour, if you just hold it up in your glass against a white background, rather than my orange ambient lighting here.
My floral shirt.
You'll see that it's a lot darker and more golden compared to the first wine, and that gives you a hint. So this is actually the 20 vintage, and it's been aged for 10 months on the lees. So aging on the lees, and the lees are what's left from the yeast of the fermentation. So you take most of it out, but the fine lees, if you leave them in the wine and you do something which is called batonnage, which means that you mix up those lees on a weekly basis, every week in the vat, it actually adds lovely depth and texture to the wine. And this, I tasted this once and I was just like, I was completely blown away. And my aim next year is to, because this is from Picpoul, is to make a wine like this in my little winery here that's behind me. Yeah.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd love to make a Grenache Gris sur lit, anything sur lit. This wine, it just shows you what you can do if you wait for all those good things. You just wait a little bit longer, and it just transforms into, it's opulent, it's rich, it's special. It tastes really, really like it's a treat, like it's something that
it's very luxurious, isn't it? We've got it down as a crisp white. I think actually we need to rethink that slightly, because for me it's a rich white. It's got lots of acidity and it's very, very fresh, but it's got so much body and texture, and it's not like Picpoul. And we keep explaining that. You sort of think less about Picpoul and more about kind of great styles of white wine. For me, this is more like really good Soave or kind of old vine Chenin almost, or something like that. But I mean, it's quite remarkable what happens, as you say, when you wait a little bit of time.
Yeah. And I think what you just said is like, it isn't like normal Picpoul. So I think if you're expecting the lighter, easier style of wine, then this could be quite a surprise when you first taste it. And hopefully then it turns into a lovely surprise, but it is pretty different to just a normal Picpoul because of the aging process. So it's just a word of warning that don't be too surprised that it is very, very different to a normal Picpoul. But as you say, on the nose, I'm just getting honeysuckle. I just like, as if you're, or jasmine, as if you've just walked past lovely summer garden. And then just richness, just honey by itself almost.
Yeah, really wild honey, isn't it?
Yeah. And no oak aging. This is actually done. You can do on the lees in oak age in barrels, but this is actually done in the vat. So there's nice, clean, fresh fruit.
And you do that in your winery, do you think? Like fresh?
I'd do anything to get this sort of style. Yeah, I'm in there every week giving it a quick twiddle.
I do remember when you rang me up to talk about this wine, and hearing how excited you were and thinking, oh, sounds quite interesting. I'm not so sure. I've never tasted anything. Then I think you sent me a couple of bottles of the 2018 vintage or something. And, it's still incredibly fresh after that length of time. So, if anyone's wondering how this might develop, because it's already quite developed in the glass, you see the color, you smell the, opulent flavors. But actually it's a wine of real quality that will age gracefully, won't it? It's got the acidity.
Yeah, there's definitely aging potential on it.
And this one won a silver at Decanter, I see as well. So I mean, that again, it's getting well received all round.
Yeah, and as for food, I think I'd move up a bit from the fish and chips for this wine.
Something on a plate.
Yeah, with a knife and fork. I think perhaps scallops, but scallops in a creamy sauce. So you could really, there's so much weight, buttery, I've just seen a word, that's amphib, it wouldn't last long, but really buttery and creamy, and that would stand up to a nice fish in a creamy sauce, for example, because there's a weight in the wine. There's also that lovely freshness that would cut through the cream. But I've tried it with cheese. I mean, I'm a real sort of white wine cheese freak, and absolutely, it's absolutely delicious. If you get a Brie de Meaux or Camembert, nice creamy cheese, it's just wonderful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, when we were on tour last week, I got asked quite a lot about what this might go with, because sometimes a wine like this could be quite hard to place. And the guy selling all of the charcuterie at one of the events came around to taste some wine, and I swapped some charcuterie for some wine, as you do in these sorts of occasions. Actually, this goes really well with salami and ham and things like that. Honestly, fantastically with sort of charcuterie. So give that a try. Vegetable dishes. What are we going for? We're going for sort of maybe some green veg. Yeah, somebody's recommended kind of asparagus. I think griddled asparagus. This would be really nice with maybe some peas.
Seaweed chips, I just thought. Seaweed
chips.
Because there is that sort of saltiness. You know, there is a sort of saltiness on the end of the wine. It's a quite saline on the end. So yeah.
And you don't see. Well, I personally I haven't seen this style of wine anywhere else in the UK to date. So I think Katie and Naked are first for this sort of style of wine, really. I haven't seen too much of it around.
I think we're definitely one of the first, if not the first. Yeah, another great first for Naked. But yeah, no, as I said, when I tasted it, it was just like, I'm going to I need this wine. It's just too delicious.
Do a lot of, somebody's just mentioned it there, and a lot of people on the tour also said, and I detect something, it almost smells and tastes a bit late harvest. So the grapes have been picked a little bit late. Do you think that's right? Do you think
yeah, I get that nose on it, and I almost got like
botrytis.
A Monbazillac or a that style, or an Alsace. Lots of people sort of thought this tasted like an Alsace, or smelt like an Alsace Riesling, something that's been aged a little bit and has got that nose to it. But it's at 13.5, so it's not picked that late. That is quite a common degree for alcohol for wines down here. So slight maturity on it, but nothing nothing too late, not late harvested.
Okay, fantastic. Cool. Hope everyone's really enjoyed that. I love that wine.
I know.
We've got some. We've got quite a few bottles of this squirreled away in the Smith household, I must admit.
There's a lovely lime, and the more, just another tip for Angels as well. Even once you've emptied the glass is empty. You can still, if you smell the wine, you'll get other aromas from it as well. And this wine just keeps going on, and I just got like lime zest. I don't know if anybody else picked up like a streak of lime, but the sort of zest. It's just
layers of flavors,
really complex.
So much, yeah. Oh well, there we go. So we've still got some of the 2020, and we're looking forward to repeating this again with the 21 and buying even more.
I have to go and put our names on it because it will go really quickly. Okay.
Yeah. So wine number 3. So we're off whites now and into rosé. We're getting into good rosé season here in the UK and in France, of course. So what are we drinking here? It's me and Mr. Jones rosé.
So what's the weather like over there today with you?
Pretty good, actually. No complaints. It's rosé weather. It's a rosé evening. There's still a blue sky out of my skylight in the loft. I've been banished up to the loft for this. Absolute very wet morning in Surrey, somebody's saying.
Karen just said it was rain in Liverpool as well. So, and down here it's been perfect rosé weather today. It's been 35 degrees, and so this is the perfect wine for that. And this is the Mere Monsieur Jones rosé. And again, we've just tasted quite a heavy wine. So I take a little sip and then take a bigger sip of this just to clear the palate a little bit, because it's a little unfair to move from that big opulent white wine to what is a lovely, easy drinking rosé wine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a difficult one to step to this wine, but I think it stands up to anything really well.
It smells lovely. It smells of like strawberries and cream. It always makes nice strawberries, raspberries.
It's very aromatic. So rosé, this is it's a collaboration of grapes between you and your husband, Jean-Marc. So
that's
a bit
right.
from your patch and a bit from his. Which grapes come from who?
So mainly it's the Carignan grape variety from my husband's vineyards. And then I just add a little tiny bit of muscat. It's only about 5%, and that forms the basis of this wine. And it's that little muscat that I think, although my husband may disagree, makes all the difference in this wine. It gives you a lovely floral side to it. So it's, once you've tasted it, it's dry. It's a dry rosé, but because it's got this little percentage of muscat, and muscat's really aromatic, it just takes the edge off the dry rosé. So if you're not too keen on completely dry rosés, try this one, and it's just the aromatics just make it a little bit more fuller, not too astringent at all.
It's such a clever thing to do, to put the muscat in, I think, because you're absolutely right. For everyone who doesn't want a searingly dry rosé, this is bone dry. It finishes really dry in the mouth when you swallow or you spit out. But on the nose, and the smells are very sort of sweet fruit, aren't they? And inviting. And I guess that's that muscat. Muscat shows through a lot of wine quite easily, doesn't it? So it's
you don't want
a lot of personality.
Yeah. You don't want too much. And I just saw that Karen reminded me, we have to get in there before the wild boar get into our muscat vineyard. And
they must love them.
They absolutely adore any grapes, but in particular the muscat, because it's the first grape that ripens down here, and the first really aromatic grape. So as soon as they're ripe, the wild boar, they will just go in. And if you don't put up the electric fence and a permanent fence, we actually have 2 fences around our little muscat vineyard, and it just really deters the wild boar, because if they get in, they will munch through the whole vineyard, which did actually happen to me when I first bought my little vineyard in Moree, just down the road. There's a little patch of muscat, and literally we were just going in to put up the electric fence, but we got there a day too late, and the wild boar got in, and they'd had a party. It was a riot in there. They didn't even eat the grapes. They just took them off, nibbled, put them on the ground, and then they rolled around. They must have rolled around.
Outrageous.
Muscat party by the wild boars in my vineyard was not a great start.
Delirious muscat high they were all on. Wild boars are talking wild boars. I mean, that must be a real kind of issue in general, I guess, for grapes. So how do you protect you because you've got a lot of vineyards, haven't you? You've bought all over. So Jean-Marc goes out with his shotgun, does he?
Yeah,
or maybe
that was me being silly. Of course he doesn't. There is a hunt.
Sorry, someone said eat them. But you've got to kill them first.
Electric fences. Yeah. There is a hunting, I don't know what to call it, hunters in the village. So it is a very organised hunt for wild boar. We're not part of it, but it is every Wednesday, Saturday and Sunday. And there are about 80 people that go out, and you have to go with the dogs that chase them out to shoot. So that does happen, but they're not very good shots down here. So that doesn't actually get rid of that many of the wild boar. So we have to protect all of our really precious grapes. We have to put an electric fence around them. And if you think, my vineyards are really spread out here in Tucson, so there's about 20 kilometers between all of the vineyards and little tiny plots, and you have to go from one to the other, just checking that the electric fence is still on. We're about to put them up. We're about to go out and prepare for the electric fences, and then in a couple of weeks they'll be on, and then we have to check every week to make sure that the batteries are still working, that they're still keeping the wild pigs out. And also we have to on the top vineyards we have a sort of permanent fence there as well, so it's a double fence. And even then, or when people go and open the gate for you,
really,
that's not
on purpose, but
it happens. I mean, it's not, it happens. Yeah. So you just have to be out there checking regularly. But wild boar are delicious. I highly recommend wild boar stew, civet de sanglier, for any of those who have actually tried it. My mother-in-law makes an absolutely delicious one, and
we're going to come on to some wines that would go pretty stonkingly well with that, I think.
We are, yes,
Um,
yes. Let's encourage a bit of wild boar eating, I think.
Yeah, delicious.
And this, perhaps just what it will go with there, there is a bit of body in this, well, quite a bit of body in the rosé. So it's a lovely structure. There is structure to it. And that's what people were telling me on tour as well, that they tried it and they're expecting just a very sort of easy rosé. It is easy, but there is body in there. And that means it will go really well with food, sort of summer salads, crispy sort of green salads. The French down here, we eat a lot of just like green salad with a vinaigrette dressing, perhaps a bit of avocado in there, just something fresh, easy, and this will go really well.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. Yeah, good summer salads, bit of ham.
Picnics.
Yeah, picnics, even some sort of light barbecues, I guess. Yeah, delicious. Fantastic. Excellent. Okay.
I forgot to mention the name as well, Me and Monsieur Jones. So obviously based on a song. Matt, I don't know if you'd like to sing a bit of that song. No. Well, I'm not going to. I know Karen, if she's there, she's,
just become very hoarse.
I can hear them singing it out there now. So anyway, a play on that famous song.
Fantastic. So for the fourth wine, we've got another Me and Mr. Jones wine.
Oh, we just can't get enough, can we?
Can't get enough of that. Well, I mean, I think it's brilliant that the domain and what you do has grown, with Jean Marc's vineyards as well. And actually, you both got very different vineyards, and they complement each other really well, and you're able to source you're still in control of everything, but you source much more widely, and you can create all sorts of different wines because of that. I think that's
because of you guys, and that's the really exciting things for us, is like the potential that Naked gives you to go out and to find really exciting stuff that you couldn't do, if we weren't with Naked. If we didn't have the angels behind it, we would just be limited to our very small production here and not be able to sort of get out and see some of the wonderful wines that are in the area too. So oh, I need to empty.
Because when did Jean Marc's vineyards, when did he sort of, because his
so
vineyards
he was a bit later than me. I was 2009, and then he was in the cooperative. So he was able to leave the cooperative in 2015, so a couple of years later. And like you mentioned, his vineyards are different. They're all in the same village as mine, but his tend to be younger vines. If I put it differently, mine are all really, really old vines, because I'm in love with old vines. And we'll come on to that when we taste perhaps the Carignan at the end. But Jean Marc's are younger, probably a bit more sensible than mine. They're trellised, whereas mine are what we call bush vines. Mine take a lot of work, and Jean Marc's are, as I said, a bit more sensible. And he has bigger vineyards, so they're bigger. He's got a 5-hectare vineyard, for example, whereas mine are hardly more than half a hectare each. So,
wow, tiny. But Jean Marc, in fact, planted quite. I mean, he's planted them and seen them all the way through.
He I mean, he's from, I don't know how many generations of vignerons. For those who followed my rambles or follow still, his father, Roger, was a vigneron, so like a wine grower, member of the cooperative, and I believe his granddad was as well. So Jean Marc's family goes back generations and generations of great growers. And what Jean Marc did was actually created his own private domain thanks to Naked, and got out of the cooperative and started producing his own wine. So that's what he did differently.
Wonderful. So this wine, Me and Mr. Jones Red 21. Who's providing what in this blend?
Well, so it's Grenache and Syrah, and I think what makes a difference is that little drop of Syrah that comes in, which surprisingly actually.
Whose is that from?
But I absolutely love Grenache. I'm a bit of a Grenache fiend as well.
Me too.
Just Grenache is so soft. I've seen people just going, this is wonderful. It's really soft. It's really easy. It's just simple, not simple as in not structured, but just easy to drink. It's smooth, there's tannins there, but it's really based on fruit, and it's just like silk. Good Grenache is just like silk, and that little tiny bit of Syrah though just gives it a little bit of structure behind it, just to so it's not too flabby. It's just got a bit of bite to the wine, which again makes it really good with food too. So just having that bit of structure to the wine. Let me just taste it. I've seen this is one of our favorites. Hey Julie, that's great.
It never disappoints. I don't think it does. It's really consistent. I think you're absolutely right. Grenache is delicious variety because it's all strawberry and delicate and slightly floral. You get those wild strawberries. I don't know whether anyone heard Katie mention the word garrigue at the start of this tasting, but that's just basically wild herbs of the region and the sort of scrubland that exists around the vineyards. And you often get those flavors coming through the wines, and then the Syrah gets in there and just adds a bit of backbone, a bit of sort of focus to the wine, and that nice sort of kind of dry supportive finish. So yeah, a bit of spice in there,
and that means it will stand up to quite a few different foods as well. You could even go quite spicy. I don't know, we drink a lot of it or we drink it often with merguez. It didn't sound quite right. I don't know if do you get merguez in the UK now?
Yeah, they're not so easy to get hold of, but yeah, you can at good butchers. And so yeah, North African sausages.
Spicy sausages and on the barbecue, so sort of a little bit burnt. And it's just absolutely delicious with this wine. So it will go with something that's slightly spicy, perhaps a mild curry as well. General sausages.
Delicious. And in terms of winemaking, it's pretty simple. It's just
pretty simple. There's no oak. Yeah. Sorry, what did you say?
Just pretty simple. No oak. Just no fresh
oak,
fruit.
Just fruit. No oak aging on this. So just quite simple, straightforward winemaking. Temperature control, just to extract as much pure. We always want to go for that nice pure fruit on the wine. So just easy and no oak aging. But somebody did point out, lamb merguez, somebody can get lamb, that it's smooth, but there's still structure to the wine. There's still length to the wine. So once you've swallowed, you still do get a lovely, and it's quite perfect. I don't know if anybody else is getting this. Jean-Marc never gets this when I say it, but Parma violets, there's this sort of violets or flowers, floral edge on the nose to the wine.
Yeah, I get that. Is that coming from Grenache or?
That's a Grenache. Yeah. Oh no, I
delicious.
From my Syrah actually.
Yeah, the special ingredient.
No, somebody hates Parma violets.
Well, I hate Parma violets too, but I like the carrot. I like the character in wine.
Yeah, I think it doesn't taste of Parma violets. It's just slight, a very faint hint.
Yeah.
I'm
not sure I like the sweet. Great, there we go. So let's keep going. So we get through
we've got two more left, haven't we?
Wines. We've got two wines. So we're off to the Corbière now, and the Corbière is a classic appellation in the Languedoc. And this is
this is Jean-Marc's special.
This is all of Jean-Marc's.
It is.
No 5% from Katie in here.
No.
Or anything like that.
But I did say to him I would be very complimentary when I presented it this evening. So no worries. And Jean-Marc says, bonjour, bonsoir to everybody. Sorry he can't be with you, but he's resting and he's going to be back for the harvest. So
good. I bet he's excited about harvest, and we all send our best to Jean-Marc.
And he's obviously not worried at all about what I'm going to say about his wine now, because I also make a Corbière, just something called Lavoie.
He's just tuned in.
So this lovely wine, Monsieur Jones Corbière, from Jean-Marc's vineyards here in the village of Touchant. So as you were saying, Matt, Corbière is the biggest red wine appellation from Languedoc. It's massive. It covers a whole zone. So most people have probably heard of Corbière, but there are lots of different qualities of Corbière
Because there's
available.
Corbière on the coast and Corbière. Oh no, that's V2,
That's
isn't it?
V2.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
There probably is
Confused.
a bit of Corbière down there.
Yeah.
But so it just means that there is a lot of Corbière produced, and it ranges in price wise from sort of the bottom shelf in the supermarket right up to some really top Boutinac Corbière. And so the advice that I give to people is, if you find a Corbière that you like, look at the producer and always come back to that one. It's more about the producer than it is about the word Corbière.
Right. And what are the sort of rules about Corbière? What needs to go? What's Corbière made
Don't ask
from?
me about rules.
Okay, no rules. We don't like rules. Katie's always breaking the rules, so it's probably not the best person to ask.
So this one is based on Carignan, Grenache, and Syrah. So the traditional grapes from this area. And again, no oak on it at all. So we're still on the pure fruit. Jean-Marc doesn't have any barrels.
So he makes the wine in stainless steel vats or concrete vats, or
relatively small stainless steel vat, but it's all stainless steel. It's much easier to clean as well. So stainless steel. You might be able to just see a little stainless steel tank.
Yeah, we can just see that through the window. Yeah,
that's mine, but that's in my La Gare winery where I am this evening. So it's just
yeah, fantastic. And so we'll come back to this one in a minute. But you're in the Gare. That's the name of your winery. That's the name of the last wine. So it's when did you move into that winery?
The year I was vandalized, because I was vandalized in the old winery. So it's 2000. I just signed for it. So I actually moved in 2014. So I've been here a couple of years now. I've done quite a few vintages in the winery.
So it was a derelict train station, was it?
Oh yeah. Should I talk about? Hold on. Jean-Marc told me not to talk about my wine before I'd finished.
Okay, well, we'll move on. We'll stop that. Let's finish this wine.
Just finish this
wine afterwards. Yeah.
And because I just picked out, I was trying to do like 3 things at the same time, which didn't work. Somebody said that it had much more structure than the previous one.
4. Yeah. Than me and Mr. Jones Red. It's a distinct step up in concentration, structure. It's a more not to do number 4 down, but it's a more serious wine. It's built more around food, more around longevity and structure, I think.
Yeah,
isn't it? It's 2020.
You sort of need food. You need food with it as well. That helps. It definitely lends itself to drinking and eating, like the French do. I mean, most French wine, definitely traditionally and even now, is made to go with food. So it's almost like it should complement the food that you're eating.
Yeah, that's very true. For France, for French people, for Italians, for Spanish people, I mean, the wine is like a sort of a vegetable dish on the side or something like that. I mean, it really is like part of the meal. You mustn't think of wine, in the UK, I guess we've got that slightly different mindset around drinking wine, where you might sit around just drinking wine, but that's very much not a French or Italian or Spanish or just generally European thing. It's a food beverage, I guess, and this wine is. It's always challenging when you're tasting wine from a taster pack on its own or whatever, and it tastes like full of structure. There's some tannins, there's some dry grip at the back, but guaranteed, if you get that wild boar stew that you were talking about earlier, this would soak it up, wouldn't it? And it would be just delicious with it. And I think it's got the concentration.
Yeah, just saw Ruth Howard saying exactly the same. Wild boar stew, this would be perfect because it's got that structure. It's also got what Jean-Marc loves about it. It's got herbs. So we talked about the garrigue, the rosemary and the thyme. So here's a bit I picked earlier. Here's a little bit of rosemary.
Oh, yeah.
Dried here in the winery. And when you go into the vineyards, if you go on the tractor, then you get these. If it's hot, you get these lovely aromas as it drives over the rosemary and the thyme, which just grow naturally in the wild garrigue countryside. And this wine is really about place for me. This is, you can smell those vineyards in this wine. You've got the rosemary, you've got the thyme, a little bit of lavender perhaps creeps in there somewhere. But it really, you know, the French talk about terroir, which is pronounced. They do, yeah. And to pronounce it, this was a little trick I gave to my ramblers. It's tear, like tear a bit of paper, and then wah. So terroir, yeah. It's really easy to say because people stumble over it because it's got that double R in the middle.
Yeah.
But terroir is really about place and identity of where a wine comes from. And if you can identify that wine to a place, or it makes you think of somewhere, and it's everything that goes into making the wine. So it's the climate, it's the people, but it is the identity of that wine. And this wine for me really is shouting terroir.
Yeah, screaming of the place, isn't it? And
screaming
that's really
of the place. Yeah. Olives with this wine, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a really honest wine for me. It just like screams of the place, goes great with the food.
It couldn't come from anywhere else. That's the thing. No. This wine comes from here.
Yeah. And if you were not a meat eater, Katie, what sort of vegetarian dishes do you think would go well with this? I mean, I don't know, some nice rich aubergine dish maybe.
I was thinking aubergine. I was definitely had sort of quite rich aubergine gratin. There's an aubergine gratin, again, that my mother-in-law does with tomatoes and aubergines, like a lasagna, but without the lasagna, if that makes sense. But it's delicious, aubergine gratin. Somebody mentioned tapenade, or they mentioned olives, black olives. And the wine actually does sometimes, you do get that black olive sort of, or even green olives. So tapenade, which is like black olive paste or green olive paste, as a sort of tapas sort of style, just olives or the tapenade.
What I love about it is it's still really fresh. All of the wines that you guys make still have this lovely freshness, great acidity. They're not overblown. They're very fresh. Delicious.
And it's quite elegant for Corbière as well, made by Matt.
It's got very delicate fingers, I'm sure. Fantastic. That is delicious. Compliments to Jean-Marc, honestly.
I'll tell him.
That's fantastic. Okay. Let's get on to the sixth wine of the evening. I'm sure there's loads to talk about also with that wine. So, ladies and gents, we're on to Lagart Carignan, and there we go. So perhaps, I guess, you might be more familiar with Katie's Fitu. So I'm just keen to I guess we were just really keen to show what a pure Carignan from a very old vineyard tastes like. So this is really the sort of top of kind of what Katie does and Katie grows. So should we start in the vineyards? I mean, you've mentioned old vines. Old vines is a real passion of yours. It's something you talk about a lot, something that's, you know, really dear to your heart. How old are the vines, and what makes that so special, do you think?
Yeah, so the Carignan vines here are over 116 years old. So I've got one vineyard that's 115 and the other one that's 120 years old. So when we're talking old vines, we're talking really old.
Seriously, geriatric.
Geriatric, retirement home. That's what I call my vineyards, actually. My vineyards are retirement homes for old vines. Yeah. And I think that's true in a couple of ways, because all the vineyards that I've bought here have been worked by people in the cooperative previous to my purchasing them. And then I like to think that we're organic, so we work organically in the vineyards, and we just give those old vines sort of the retirement they deserve. So only organic food, they get a lot of attention. We just like really, really sort of care for them. We've got a little tractor.
So it's like an old vine sanctuary.
It is. It's a little old vine sanctuary.
For all of their years of service.
Yeah, that's what it's like, Domaine Jones. And I just think the Carignan's a difficult grape variety because it tends to be when it's younger, but not necessarily. It's when the yields are high, you're not guaranteed a great wine. So it really reacts to higher yields. You lose the lovely fruit and the spice and the concentration quite quickly. And you can end up with quite a harsh, tannic style of wine with not much fruit. And Carignan becomes interesting when those yields are lower, and the older the vine, naturally, the lower the yields on the vines. So that's one massive advantage. So you get less grapes, which here in this area, people are always interested in the yields that you can get. Whereas I'm probably the only person definitely in the village that is like, I don't care about the yield. I just want those grapes to be concentrated and small amounts, and just to get the best from the grapes. So it's not about the yield. Also the roots on old vines, they've had 116 or 20 years to make their way through the soil. When I say soil here, there isn't that much soil. It's basically sand, rocks. And we are the area in France that has the least rainfall per year. So those vines, the roots have to go a long way down to get the underground water. But after 120 years, those roots are really well developed. So they manage to get lovely, fresh water from underground to keep the vines nice and lush, even through a drought or through the very high temperatures that we have down here. So big advantages in that. And also just the way they're formed, they're not trained on wires, so they're in what we call a gobelet, or a bush, with the branches, and the branches actually cover the soil, not the soil, the earth, but so that avoids any evaporation as well. It sort of keeps the soil shadier than if you're on a trellis system as well. And also they're all so individual. I tell you, they're so individual that each of my old vines has got a name.
Yes, so that's incredible. You've named every one of them. How many are there? Thousands and thousands.
I haven't named it.
I've got about some names.
40,000. So I've started to name them, but that's I know some people have actually adopted one. That's one of my other little projects, that you can actually adopt one of these very old vines and give it a name, and I'll look after it for you and send you photos of how it's doing during the season. But that's how personal it gets with old vines, because they are all really, really individual.
It's a wonderful initiative that you did, the Adopt a Vine, over lockdown, really, wasn't it? Yeah. And I know we've got an adopted vine, and I look at its picture on our fridge every morning. Yeah, and it's a fun, and if anyone's interested, and if anyone hasn't adopted, but if can they still adopt vines, and how do they go about doing that?
There are still some of those poor old vines are still looking for a parent.
That ugly that no one wants them yet.
Yeah, the really odd balls are still left on the site. But yeah, if they're on domainejones.com, or just adopt an old vine, Katie Jones, you'll see them. But yeah, they're that's how personal it gets with old vines. But apart from them just being individual characters, they also make wines of great individual character as well. And we talked about terroir with Jean-Marc's wine, the Corbière, but again, this, I can smell my vineyards in here. This is the Colombier and the Roubourg vineyard, and it's a Carignan that comes from there. And it's got all the herbs, it's got all the heat, it's got all the sense of place, again, from those two little vineyards.
It's incredible. I think it's fascinating listening to you talking about old vines and what kind of, people, but I guess for a lot of people, they would say, oh, $17.99, I mean, that's a pretty serious price to pay for a bottle of wine. But when you explain what's gone into it, I mean, this is really a snapshot of history, which I think is one of the remarkable things. But it's great to see lots of comments in the chat saying this is great value for money, because it really is, at that level, considering what's gone into this. I mean, what do you get? Like one bunch per vine?
It's almost a bottle per vine. It's just slightly over a bottle per vine. But I mean, other people in around here, they'd rip them up. They would literally, there's because it doesn't make economic sense in the system that they are working. So it's totally normal that they need produce higher yields on the vines. So these poor old little vines are just being ripped up because they're not economically viable. And then that's when Katie steps in and sort of buys.
Yeah. So you've sort of actively stepped in those situations where you've heard that vineyards are going to be grubbed up, have you? And
or I'll step in. When I see that there's an old vine vineyard for sale of a particular grape variety that interests me. So Jean-Marc will go and check it out as well, just to make sure it's okay. But for example, we mentioned white wine and my love for white wine, and there's not that many white wine vineyards here left because they've all been grubbed up. There were never that many anyway, but what there were has been grubbed up and planted with red. So if I see an old vine white vineyard up for sale, then I normally snap it up.
And they tend to be Grenache, Grenache Gris, Macabeu.
Yeah, the traditional grapes, Grenache Gris, Macabeu, Carignan Gris, which very, very unusual. I think I've got about a third of the world production of Carignan Gris.
Wow, what a claim to fame.
That rare, yeah. And I only made 800 bottles, so, but it's really rare. And I also think that these old vines are so adapted to the terroir, and they've been here for so long. Imagine what they've seen during 120 years.
How many owners they've had, what they've seen in that time. Yeah, that's amazing. If anyone, I mean, I haven't got any visuals for anyone tonight. We've just been having a bit of a chin wag. But if anyone is interested in sort of experiencing these things firsthand, sort of virtually maybe, or I'm sure they're very welcome to come and visit you.
Lots of people have been down. Yeah.
But another thing that Katie did, and I know there are lots of ramblers on this call, but your vineyard rambles over lockdown became quite a hit and were a fantastic thing, to keep people entertained over lockdown, but for various other reasons. But you're still doing them, so people can tune into you on Instagram every Friday, and you'll walk them through some of these amazing vineyards, won't you?
Yeah, and so every Friday I try and get out in the vineyard still, so hopefully I'll be out this Friday. It's a bit early, it's 7:30 in the UK time, so you don't even have to get out of bed.
Set the alarm clock,
or just like lie in bed, put it on, and just transport yourself to the south of France. And there are also some little videos on we mentioned Sunshine After Rain, the red wine, and there are some videos on there of the vineyards where that wine came from, so that gives you an idea as well. Or there's loads on YouTube. If you just do Domaine Jones YouTube, there's a whole channel. I think there's over 100 videos of what I did during COVID, if you're interested in actually physically seeing. And as you mentioned, Matt, otherwise you're all more than welcome to come down and visit us down here in Tucson. And if you adopt an old vine, you can actually meet your vine.
That was quite an experience.
Exactly, yeah, definitely.
Wow, well, that's been awesome, really interesting. Should we take a few questions if you've got time? I know we're over 9 o'clock.
Yeah, another 10 minutes. Lovely.
Yeah. We've got a few questions, so I'll razz through them. So Russell's asking some of the logic behind some of your names. So it'd be a good. He's talking about Lagar and Le Petit Train.
Yeah, we didn't mention Lagar. Thanks, Russell. So let's start that conversation again. So can you see this vat here at the end of my finger? I'm actually sitting in my Lagar winery. So this was a lovely old train shed that I bought back in 2014. And it used to house the little steam train or tram that used to go from Tucson to Narbonne. It took 4 hours to get there in 1905. Nowadays, it takes about 45 minutes in a car. And I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase this wonderful building. Hence, a lot of my wines make reference to trains or train stations like La Gare. So, où est la gare? Well, you are in it at the moment here. Le Petit Train, La Voie as well is a platform in a station. So lots of train references, but all based on this wonderful building here in the village of Tuchon that I was fortunate enough to be able to convert into my dream winery, thanks to you angels.
That's really cool. All right, what's next? Are the French Picpoul grapes similar to any other country grapes? It's not a usual French. I'm not a usual French wine drinker, so that's why I wanted to try these. I love your story and so happy that you came through with thanks to Naked. So Picpoul. I'll
throw that over to you, Matt, because I haven't got a clue.
Oh, thanks. I'm almost certain that Picpoul is only grown in the south of France. I'm sure there is somebody growing it somewhere, because there always is, but nothing of any kind of commercial significance, I would say.
Yeah, I think is it Languedoc and the Rhone, perhaps?
Yeah, but definitely just France for that. Right, what's next? Can you just confirm the grapes in the rosé? Apparently our notes differ to what's in there.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that, guys.
Yeah. I know I mentioned the main grapes in there. So I mentioned my grape, which is the Muscat, actually, and the
5%.
Yeah. But there is as well. Rosé, can be made up of lots of different. So Cinsault, Syrah, and a little bit of Grenache in there too, along with the Carignan and the Muscat.
Yeah, lovely. And just on the rosé, you're making you're running off the red grapes, and then you're adding the Muscat in afterwards, or
no? The Muscat is actually
doing it all together.
You have to pick the Muscat with the other grapes, and then we press. So we press, but very gently,
all together
in contact. Yeah, all together.
Yeah. Lovely.
Just a couple of hours.
Cool. Benjamin asking, is the terroir largely limestone? I don't think it is it?
Well, the massive mountain that is here, the Toche Mountain, is a limestone massif. So yes, there is a lot of limestone. And I would say it is mainly, but this is the most geologically rich area of the whole of France. So we get lots of geology students coming down to study the soils because they are so complex. And although there is a high percentage of limestone, there's also sand, shale. It used to be an inland lake as well. So you've got pebbles, and it's just a big mixture of different types. And that's what makes each vineyard is individual as well, because the soil types tend to differ. We've got slate soils as well. So it tends to differ between the vineyards as well. There's not one type of soil, but heavily influenced by the limestone.
Awesome. John is asking, has wine number 6 been in oak? We didn't really talk about oak. Wine 6 is probably the only oaked wine of the night.
And I'm glad you raised the question, because I like to make it really subtle. So there's only about 10% oak. I don't oak the whole lot of the wine, and it's not aged in new oak either. So I put some of it into a barrel and then blend it back into the tank. So around about 10% oak on the Carignan.
And so like you say, old oak. So old oak, the wine's been through the oak a few times, therefore the oak imparts much less of those kind of vanilla-y, coconutty characters, and it's more just adds texture to the wine and shape, doesn't it? Yeah. Fantastic. And could you explain the bacon aroma? He says, so you'd often get those kind of meaty aromas on dark concentrate. I guess that's the low yield and just the seriousness of the Carignan there.
Yeah, he found bacon, did he? Yeah. Have another sniff.
There you go. Lots of people asking which books you referenced earlier.
Oh yeah, okay. So
French books.
I've got 3 books to reference if anybody's interested in learning a bit more about life in the south of France in general. So the first 2 are by Marcel Pagnol, and it's Jean de Florette, I don't have to do that. Jean de Florette, and the sequel is Manon de Source. Those 2. But if you want a real glimpse into how hard it can be living in small communities and you're ready for a big read, Zola's La Terre. So Zola, the Earth. If Dad's watching, he'll be going, yes, it's amazing. And it shows you all sides and the worst sides of living in tiny villages. So if you're a reader and you love like classic novels, Zola, La Terre, stick with it. It hasn't changed a bit.
Incredible.
Somebody's just adopted, hold on, big moment here. Somebody's just adopted Hortense. Hortense, live. Thank you very much.
Live on our Taste.
I'm going to rush out and tell him. Is it a girl or a boy? Hortense, I think it's. I'm going to go and tell them. They'll be so excited. And we'll send your little adoption pack. He's going to be so chuffed. Thank you very much.
Oh, there we go. Fantastic. And plenty more that can be adopted. So keep going. That's great. Somebody asking, particularly with the Lagar, that tastes like a wine that has aging potential. Have you managed not to drink some for long enough to find out? Have you got a little library?
I didn't. Yeah, we have. We've got a library. So we made some. I think we started in 2012, and it's still really fresh. That's the great thing about Carignan, is that it has a freshness. It's had quite a high acidity to the grapes, which means that you can keep. It's got a lovely balance between the fruit and the acidity. So you can age this for which vintage? Sorry, I've just lost my bottle here. But
20, isn't it? No,
yes,
19. We're on
19.
No, 20.
20. So 5 years, it will be absolutely no problem. It maintains the fruit and that freshness in there. But what I would say is, if you like it as it is now, drink it now. There's no point aging it. If you like, I quite like the sort of fresh style, the younger style of Carignan.
It depends how you like your wines, I guess, doesn't it? I mean, if you like the fruit character, or if you like those more smoky, meaty, savoury characters, that tends to come with age. But what the wine has is lots of freshness, and that will see it through a very long period without kind of falling apart. So, yeah, absolutely ageable. And Ruthie complimenting you, asking what the maximum production of that is, and saying it would easily sit in Michelin star restaurants. So
it's definitely a food wine. Definitely an interesting food wine. So and we produce about just over 1,000 bottles.
Yeah, so it's pretty small. It's really small. Pretty small production. And in this range, for anyone who's interested, you also produce a Naked Fitu, which is a blend, and that takes me on maybe takes me on to my last question. We'll have one last question of the night, and that's Martin asking, do you recommend drinking single grape varieties or blends? Single or blends, which are better? Tough
Martin,
question.
It's
good,
such
good
a
one, Martin.
Question. Yeah. Is it time to go home now? I think. It's really difficult, and I love single varieties because I know which vineyard they're coming from, and it's the expression of, well, for me, on my vines, the single variety from that particular vineyard. But that's just talking about my very top stuff, like the Carignan, the Syrah that we do in Lagar range as well. And then the next day I'll taste a Fitu, and I will just say, isn't it wonderful how these grapes fit together? And traditionally in a vineyard, the vines would have been planted. Some of mine are planted with Carignan and Grenache in that vineyard. And so it's like a field blend. They're already traditionally planted. That's the way they were planted.
It's a tough question. I'm totally with you. I think it's horses for courses. So I'm a total fence sitter on this one, because it depends on the wine and the grape variety. So, for example, I'm a massive Italian wine winophile, or however you want to say it. But Nebbiolo, a grape variety in Barolo, for example, is not good at blending. Like it wants to be on its own. And I think Riesling's probably another example of that. And they're two of the greatest potential wines of the world. But I also think it's fascinating, particularly historically, in a region like yours, where traditionally that vineyard would have been planted with a variety of things that all complement each other somehow magically, and somebody discovered that and did it all together.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's exciting. And if you take that apart, it loses something within that. You can take it apart to show different things, but you might always come back to the fact that actually a blend kind of is the iconic wine of that region.
Yeah. And I did have, I don't know if I should say it, but I did have last year, I had a vat where I just put, sometimes like I'm talking white wines, not all the wine fits into a vat. And so you always have little bits left over, and sort of the little bits that were left over with different grape varieties, and they were all mixed together. And it actually ended up being one of my favorite wines in the winery. And it's actually the base of the Vigna Caché, the white wine that you have, which is a blend of the Macabeu. So if anybody wants to taste a blended white wine from my vineyards, then Le Vigna Caché is what that is. And that's a wonderful wine because it takes the best from each of the grape varieties.
We've just not long had that back on the site, the new vintage, so everyone can go on the site and look it up. We've got some stock, and I agree, it's delicious. Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the final question, Katie, just for me, if I may, what's next at Domaine Jones? What have you got your eye on? What new projects are you thinking about? Could we have a little snapshot into the future? Or is that closely guarded, or are you just doing the same?
As long as you don't tell anybody.
No, I would dream of it.
I'd really, really like just to have a couple of hectares in Wales. And I wondered what the angels...
In where?
Wales. In Wales.
In Welsh Wales.
In Welsh Wales.
Wow.
It's something that's been at the back of my mind for a while, just because of climate change. Sometimes it gets really, really hot down here. And I've tasted quite a few Welsh wines recently. And I think that there you go. Karen's moving to Anglesey.
Is something popular from the Angels chat?
Yeah. I just wondered if Naked might be interested if I did.
Live on Zoom, a buying.
Yeah, shall we vote on that, shall we, for you, Matt? No, I'd be really intrigued to just have a couple of hectares. I don't make a sparkling wine, and I've always wanted to. And I think the place, White Castle, yeah, I'm with you. That's Rob, who's on my rambles, brilliant wines. And I just think if I was going to make a sparkling wine, because I haven't made one yet, then I wouldn't do it from grapes from here. I'd like to do it
from Wales. And what is it about Wales in particular? Lots of is it just the fact that Kent, Sussex, Hampshire are all fully planted? Well, not fully planted, but
there's a price
planted
aspect, but I never go where other people go. You might have noticed, so I don't follow. I go somewhere a bit different. And also Domaine Jones, it has to come from Wales.
It's got to be from Wales. Yeah. Well, there we go. Well, we can talk more about this in the future offline.
Thanks, I'll send you samples. Okay.
Maybe it'd be great to get some angels voting on this project later down the track. Maybe we won't put them through it right now, but I don't know whether we've got time for a quick poll on
a quick one, and then I really
very quick
go.
You must go, but favorite would be, I'd love to see which everyone's favorite wine of the night was. So we'll just give everyone a chance to vote quickly, and then we'll say goodbye. But it'd be fascinating.
While they're voting, I see a couple of people adopted some vines, so I just want to say thank you very much. The old vines will be really happy. You might just have to bear with me while we get the packs together. We send a pack out, but they're all personalised, so don't worry if it's not in the post tomorrow. It might be a couple of weeks by the time we take their photos and do the.
Got to go out and do the makeup and
things like that.
Yeah,
might be a bad day for them. So, whoa! Oh,
there we go. Look at that. Well, look, that's fascinating to see. Actually, normally it's quite close, but we've got two absolutely resounding successes. which is the Lagar Carignan and
Yeah.
the Picpoul-sur-Lit. So that's fantastic.
Thank you so much. I won't tell Jean-Marc about that, but thank you so much, everybody. That's fantastic.
That's great.
It's really, really interesting to see how well the Carignan did, because it's probably a wine that not many people would have bought. And so really great to have been able to
well,
try
that's why these tastings are great. That's why the tasting packs are great. It gives, you know, you get to try stuff with relatively low risk and try new things that you may not have thought about, and see what different prices get you in different parts of the world. So they're really useful for those reasons. Yeah, brilliant. Well, let's call that a night. I think it's been fantastic. I've just thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you. They're remarkable wines, and
just the two of us. It's been great, hasn't it, Matt?
Absolutely. It's a quiet Wednesday, having a natter. So it's been fantastic. I hope everyone's really enjoyed it. We've got another wine tasting coming up with in a couple of weeks' time with Toby, our resident wine guru. So he'll be talking to you about Sauvignon Blanc and Rioja, two classic styles of wine. So if you want to find out more about those, make sure you buy the taster pack and tune into that. Otherwise, thank you, Katie. That's been really, really awesome night.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we'll talk soon.
Okay, cheers. Bye, everybody. Bye,
Thanks,
Matt.
guys. Thank you.
Bye.